Federal Drive is presented by GEHA, Government Employees Health Association, proudly providing health and dental benefits to federal employees and their families. Visit GEHA.com.
As global threats rise, the U.S. Air Force is facing a controversial crossroads. The Pentagon's fiscal 2026 budget proposes deep cuts to the F-35 fighter program and the cancellation of the E-7 Wedgetail surveillance aircraft, moves that a group of former Air Force chiefs of staff call a strategic blunder. In a letter to Congress, the group warns that these reductions would shrink an already overstretched force and erode America's ability to deter or win future conflicts. Here with more on their logic is one of the signers of that letter, retired Air Force Lieutenant General Dave Deptula. Lieutenant General Deptula, thank you for joining me today.
Hey, it's great to be on, Terry. Look forward to our discussion.
You and a group that you are part of have called the proposed cuts to the F-35 and the E-7 program a quote-unquote strategic blunder. That's a big statement. Can you tell us what you think is at stake here and why everyday Americans should care?
Yeah, no, thanks very much. It's a great question to start with, and I think that the fact that we have 6 former chiefs of staff of the Air Force along with many other senior Air Force leadership deciding to send a letter to Congress asking that some of these decisions on the declining size or by the F-35 and terminating the E-7 are so important is frankly because, number one, the Air Force is in a force structure nosedive. Right now, today, it's the oldest and the smallest in its entire history, and it's on a path to get even smaller with no plan to stop its decline. Now, what I'd tell you and your audience is that bodes very badly for America's defense, and the only way to recover is to start buying more combat aircraft than it retires every year. Now, second, it's because that both these aircraft are the backbone of any future fight. The F-35 is our premier 5th-generation multi-role fighter. It's stealthy, it's networked, and it's combat-proven. You just saw its demonstration of its capability that played a central role in Israel's successful air campaign over Iran, and it paved the way for our B-2 follow-on attacks. Now, with respect to the E-7, it's known as the Wedgetail because of the design of the antenna on the back of the airplane. It's our only viable replacement for the aging E-3 airborne warning and control system fleet, which was designed in the 1970s and is now literally kept flying only with handmade or junkyard parts because it's so old. Now, what the E-7 does is it gives the Air Force the battle management and command and control architecture that's necessary to manage all these other complex air machines in a complex and contested environment. So bottom line, I know that's a lot of words, but without enough F-35s or the E-7, we simply will not be equipped to win in a fight with China, Russia, or any serious adversary.
Well, I want to go back and take parts of your answer kind of one at a time, and let's start with the F-35s. We hear a lot about drones and autonomous aircraft. Isn't the future of air combat unmanned? Why do we need manned fighters for the future?
Well, I'll give you the direct answer. It's because uninhabited, unmanned drones, collaborative combat aircraft, unmanned aerial vehicles, whatever you'd like to call them, are certainly part of the future. But today, and quite frankly, nobody knows how long it's going to take to get to a point where they can actually accomplish the same kinds of events and activities that crewed or manned aircraft can control. So the issue is not one of either or, it's really both. And I'm going to give you a perfect example. There are many folks out there that have heard about what we're now called, the Air Force is calling collaborative combat aircraft. Well, they're not a substitute for either crewed fighters, bombers, or airborne command and control. In fact, they rely on aircraft like the F-35 and the E-7 to inform their operations. So think, if you will, about the F-35 as the tip of the spear and the E-7 is the brains behind their operation. Because without those crewed systems, uninhabited aircraft lack the coordination, targeting data, and real-time decision-making capability that are provided by these other kinds of airplanes. So the future is really a team of both inhabited and uninhabited systems working together.
I'm speaking with retired Air Force Lieutenant General David Deptula. He's the Dean of the Mitchell Institute for Aerospace Studies. Thank you for describing that multi-platform mix. You also mentioned China and the Indo-Pacific theater as key drivers of the need for F-35s and E-7s. How would they help in that particular theater?
Well, the fact of the matter is that the F-35 possesses a variety of capabilities that make it very difficult for the Chinese to defend against, particularly if you array these aircraft across a variety of different locations surrounding China. Because of its stealthy, low observability is really what it allows it to do. Is what stealth provides it is the ability to penetrate highly contested airspace, and then with its panoply of sensors, it can pick up information that is unable to be achieved by any other system, and then fuse that information, providing the pilot a decision advantage over the adversary so he or she can actually employ weapons or share the information with the variety of other systems in the theater to be able to apply maximum pressure on the Chinese. So I know it's a lot of words, but the fact of the matter is it provides us an advantage because of its stealthiness and its sensor ability all fused into one airframe that, frankly, there aren't any other aircraft that can do that.
There's also an international allies angle to this. The UK and Australia are both big purchasers of both of these platforms. What would it say if the U.S. actually pulls back its own support of the F-35 and the A-7?
It would have a significant impact in that it sends the wrong signal to our allies and adversaries alike that America will be stepping back from the lead in these advanced technological areas. You know, our allies from the United Kingdom and Finland to Japan, and you mentioned Australia, South Korea, they're buying more F-35s and many of those nations E-7s because they know these aircraft work. And if we back away while they lean in, it undermines coalition interoperability and deterrence. And domestically, it deepens a dangerous hole in our force structure. As I mentioned earlier, the Air Force is already the smallest and the oldest in its history. And without these modern replacements, we'll end up flying antique aircraft against 21st century threats.
So you're making a case both strategically and internationally for extending the purchasing of both of these platforms. In your opinion, then why is the Pentagon proposing to pull back?
Money. It's purely a matter of money. Matter of fact, General Alvin just came out. Alvin is the chief of staff, the current chief of staff of the Air Force. He just came out last week in public and said so. It's not that the Air Force doesn't want it. It's because of the restricted resources that have been issued to the Pentagon. Most people don't know this, but the President Trump's administration's Department of Defense request in 2026 is less than President Biden's last request for defense in 2025. So, if we want peace through strength, we have to invest to be able to get it.
Your letter proposes increasing procurement of the F-35s to 75. Could our industrial base even sustain that level of production?
Yeah, absolutely. It's just a matter of money. And the fact of the matter is we need a minimum of 72 per year to stop the decline in the Air Force. In the proposed FY26 budget, the Air Force is proposing retiring over 300 airplanes while it's only planning to buy 75 airplanes. So you can see that these are facts, that if we don't buy more than what we retire, the Air Force is going to continue to get so small that at some point we're not going to be able to sustain our national defense strategy.
So what has the response from Congress been to your letter?
Well, actually, I was just over there yesterday, and they're paying attention. Like I said, this is the first time as far as most people know, that we've been getting this kind of support behind, 6 former chiefs of staff of the service and dozens of other Air Force officers, senior officers, to support this kind of increase. That said, there are a lot of competing priorities, but the fact of the matter is, while everyone has a position on guns versus butter, you can't argue with the preamble of the Constitution, which states that we form this government to, quote, provide for the common defense, comma, promote the general welfare, unquote. Unfortunately, for the last several decades, we've been spending as if those two clauses were reversed, and we need to provide sufficient funding to maintain our nation's defense.
I've been speaking with retired Air Force Lieutenant General David Deptula, who's the Dean of the Mitchell Institute for Aerospace Studies. Sir, thank you for joining me, and thanks for sharing this letter with us.
You bet, Terry. Have a great day.
We'll post this interview at federalnewsnetwork.com/Federal Drive. Subscribe to the Federal Drive wherever you get your podcasts.